better scene.
It's the same scene. Well, if you're happy, that's fine. Okay. Yeah. So, but over Pesach, I was giving shirim at a hotel, and one of the shirim I pointed that Rabbi Cheskel Levenstein, the famous Rosh Hashiva, in his Sefer on Emunah, he makes the point. It's a very interesting essay he writes. He's talking about you're supposed to see yourself as they're going out from Mitzrayim, of course. And in the going out from Mitzrayim, it's seeing yourself as though you're. He writes very personally. It's very unusual how he's never been able to do that. How see yourself as though you're there, to get the feeling in it. And he analyzes and comes to a very remarkable conclusion as to why he's never been able to, as it were, put himself in that position. And he says the answer is quite simple, because it's a bit, if I can use this analogy, which is going out over the internet, it's like the measles epidemic and having yourself inoculated against measles. Now, when you get an injection and inoculation against any disease, what are they actually doing? How does it work? Do you know how it works?
Immunity.
Yeah, how do they give you immunity? I'm immune. We were just tested. Yeah, go on. So they take the bugs that cause the disease, and they squirt dead bugs into your body. Your body is an extremely effective weapon against disease, but it's got to recognize the bug to know how to kill the bug. There was a remarkable in England recently, somebody who was dying literally days to go with cancer. The white blood cells are very good at killing cancer cells. It's just that cancer is much better at multiplying and overwhelming the white blood cells. So what they did was they took white blood cells out of somebody and they grew them, in some sort of glass jar in a lab, and then they simply injected them back in. And now it was like the 7th Cavalry coming to the rescue. Now the overwhelmed white blood cells in the body were now supplemented by a gazillion white blood cells that have been bred outside the body, and the cancer was gone. In the case of measles or other diseases like this, what they simply do is take the dead measles bacterium and they put them inside the body. The body recognizes them, so when it's exposed to the live one, it knows how to do it, and it's finished. So you become immune to the real stuff when the real stuff comes, because of the, as it were, the almost fake stuff. In a sense, he says, that's very similar to why he can't really get his head round. He's not excited, is really the language I should have burned down to read to you, of the Seas Mitzrayim story, in the way that he should be, for the very simple reason he says, I'm inoculated against it because of the version I learned when I was a kid. The version you learned when you were a kid, if everybody knows, we went out, Hashem took us out with an outstretched arm. Did Hashem take us out from Mitzrayim with an outstretched arm?
Sure.
Sure not.
Sure it says.
Absolute nonsense. Doesn't have an arm.
Yad Chazaka.
Does it have a hand? Oh, not literally. But when you're learning as a kid, that's the picture that comes into your mind. And of course, the Rambam says the Torah has to speak in language which we understand, Lashon B'nai Adam, because we can't speak in his language. I think once in the share I told you the thing that they do at universities and philosophy classes, they ask you to invent a new colour, which you can't possibly do. You can only do things within your experience. So you can't relate to God in God's language. He has to speak to you in your language, things that you can understand. So you get the idea about a strong hand. Hashem doesn't have a hand. This is the Rambam. It's all the Rambam. An arm? He doesn't have an arm. Or when Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Mount Sinai and he sees a picture of Hashem wearing the tefillin, and he sees the knot. It's the knot that he sees. Now, for Hashem to wear tefillin, he would need two things: one, a head, and two, tefillin, and he has neither.
Big enough.
Sorry, well, it's not either at all. Full stop. I mean, interesting. Big. I mean, big is a construct of this world. And the message that was being imparted to Moshe was that because the knot that he sees, one of the messages, according to the Bial Arabi, I think it's brilliant. You only see Hashem looking backwards. No, more than that. How many times in your life, in our lives, have we had tough times, things have gone wrong, and we think it's a disaster, but then afterwards, 5 years after hindsight, right? So looking back, then you see the whole picture. You don't see Hashem looking back. That was the message that was being imparted, right? But the idea of Hashem having a head, having an arm, wearing tefillin, all that sort of stuff, it's Lashon B'nai Adam. It speaks to us in language we can understand. So when we're children, we have to speak in language that children will understand. I told you that once. My grandson. I used this in one of my shiurim, and for just as an example of a father and a child. But I did it with one of my grandsons, who's now bar mitzvah, but I think it was 2 years ago, and he asked me the obvious question: who made God? It's a question that almost every child asks a parent, or in my case, a grandparent. And I said to him, I mean, I should have given the right answer, but I just decided to make my example real. I actually did this spiel on him. I said, you know, Monty, that's a very interesting question. But you realise, in posing the question, who made God, you're assuming a cause and effect universe, aren't you? A past, present, and future. Because in asking the question, who made God, you're assuming there's time when he wasn't made. Then he was. And then he will be, assumingly, carrying on. So therefore, on that, you're a cause and effect universe, past, present, and future. But if we say about Hashem in Lo Shakespeare and Lo Taklis, he's above time, then the question, which is posed in a universe where time exists, doesn't apply in a universe when it doesn't. And he went, Sadie, I don't understand the word you said. I said, it's okay, buddy, I know exactly. And then I sort of explained something that he could possibly get his head around a little bit. But when you're talking to a child, you have to explain it in Lashon B'nai. Not B'nai Adam, B'nai Bonim. And so, as a consequence, if you ask any child who was the first man, he'll say Adam. Well, of course, Adam wasn't a man. And he and his wife, Mrs. Adam, lived in a garden. Oh, a garden. What picture comes into your mind? You do this as word association, trees. You know, trees and all that sort of stuff. Fine. So every child imagines there was a man. You must have seen the famous Michelangelo painting, which adorns the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican in Rome.
Unfortunately,
big dome. Yeah. Sorry.
Unfortunately, couldn't make it.
You don't have to make it. It's in calendars. It's on all of us. There's a picture of Michelangelo's conception of God, and God looks like a very large Santa Claus, big white beard, and he's putting his finger down, and then there is Adam is something like the fingers I think nearly touch. I can't remember, because he looks a bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his young days, all muscly, and that's that. And this Nebuch is a child's conception of God. But that's basically how we understand. Adam was in the garden, and he's a big guy.
I'm shocking that Christianity approved of such art.
That's exact. Of course it does, because they conceive God as having human form. So that's not a contradiction. But from our point of view, it's an absolute nonsense. And then you move on to far more sophisticated ideas. It's the same Torah, but now we're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. As I was saying in the shir today, essentially a Jew's role is to go through life with emunah pshuta, but havana amuka. You're supposed to have a simple child's faith in God, like any mother or anybody has, you know. And this is what it says in the Council of Fathers in the 7th paragraph of Shara B'tochen, that when you're first born, you're fed by your mother. Your mother nurses you. You're held at your mother's breast, and a brand new baby just sees the breast as being the thing that feeds. It doesn't realize it's a part of its mother. Later on, he realizes it's the mother who's feeding the baby and builds a relationship with the mother. Then, much later, you understand the father's role in the family. Then, eventually, you become independent. You get your own job. You support yourself. But none of that has yet got to the stage of understanding that all of that, everything that happened to you until now, was supplied by God. But you're moving in that direction. But a child only sees the simple. But as you move forward, you understand it in a far more sophisticated manner. He says, my problem is that the imagery I have, the pictures that I have in my mind, and not just as a baby, but 9 and 10, etc., 12, a more sophisticated, but still only a basic understanding, that inoculates me against the real message getting through. So his solution is you have to literally wipe the. I had a problem with my computer this week. I remember talking to some guy in Apple, and he was saying, there's, the default, the nuclear option is to wipe the computer completely clean and then start all over again. That is Rabbi Levinstein's solution here. You have to literally blow away that which came before. Rabbi Dessel says,
which is A, dangerous, and B,
no, nothing's necessarily dangerous. Yeah, but how do you do it? I mean, I would say, how do you do this? The impossibility of it strikes me.
You have to become a kofar for the day.
No, not a coffee. Just wipe this thing clean. Just some get rid of these childhood images in order for a far more sophisticated one to get. Rabbi Dessler, in Chelik Hey, if I remember, page 25, his solution poses the same question. It's an essay called Chidush and Hergel. He poses that he offers a solution, and it's like this: when the thing that you're learning is the same thing you've learned before, But you go into it so deeply that you find something so astonishing that it literally blows you away, that your reaction is, wow! And it simply blows and destroys, tears down the binyan that you created before and replaces with something new. So you have to find something so exciting that literally blows you away. And when I was in Pesach, away at Pesach at the hotel I was at, I found a couple of, 2 or 3 actually, Kedushim in the Master. I got them Sifta, I got in the Master, and I got it, which was absolutely fabulous. And I took Dayan Miser, the Minchas Yitzchak. He was Dayan Miser, the Minchas Yitzchak, of course, the famous Pesach. He was the Rav of the shul I used to daven in Manchester. I only met him once. He'd gone on to become, he was there based in Manchester. He went on to become the head of the Eda Karedist in Yerushalayim. Remarkable, him and his father hid from the Nazis during the Second World War. Sorry, him and his son, Rick Berish, hid from the Nazis and just lay all day long in an attic. Somebody must have brought him food, but he survived. Anyway, but remarkable. His Sefer, Minchas Yitzchak Al Torah, it's just gold, absolute gold. And so these were, and when I learned them, I was standing at the front because we knew the rabbi in the shul of the hotel. They set you at the front, and I just saw this. I should have been down. Wow! And I was literally jumping up and down. I was going, wow, because I jump up and down and I get excited. And I thought, this is a bit strange behaviour. People behind me, I think I've got bonkers. But if you see something which literally blows you away. So this is one of the things I found that literally blew me away, which takes us into the fire at the cathedral in Paris, which we'll come back to shortly. Anyway, so this is Aleph-based stuff that we all know. In Haggadah, right at the beginning, Avodim Ha'ina L'Par B'Mitzrayim. But Yotzianu and Hashem took us out from there. Here we come to our imagery again. Misham B'Yad Gazaka with a strong hand, Mizrayim Natuya, figures of okay. Ve'ilu Lo Hoitziak. I mustn't in any way mislead you. These words are crucial. And there's a million things behind, as we're going to say before, all sorts of droshes and explanations through that imagery. The imagery is exact, and it conveys a gazillion aspects and facets of what went on there, but still, ultimately, you mustn't think that God has an arm or a hand. This is what the Rambam says that this right at the beginning of Moreh Nevuchim. But anyway, the Ilu, listen to this, the Ilu Hodseh Kadosh Baruch Hu Esav Israel. Had God not taken our forefathers out from Egypt, Hari Onu Uvanenu, now us and our grandchildren, we would still be slaves to Param Mitzrayim. And all the Meforshim talk about that. What does that mean? People turn around and say, well, Paro is like, in the Egyptian Empire, was like the title Caesar was in the Roman Empire. Caesar, and they speak to him Caesar, but it wasn't the same Caesar. Julius Caesar was not Augustus Caesar. Augustus Caesar was not Trajan, etc. They were all Caesars. The leaders of Egypt was called. So one people say that's what it means. Right? There would have been, Egypt would have carried on, and there would have been Caesars who were still not to the same guy. That'd be, as we used to say in
institution.
Yeah, exactly. As we used to say in Yeshiva and Gates said, that's a Balabash terrorist. Here, the Shem Yishmael says something so gorgeous. I'm going to read to you the whole thing, or this is a short thing, but so don't worry. But this got me so excited and started my thoughts towards the Shir. So, the Ilah Hotzeh Kadosh Baruch Hu Zalazina, etc., etc. And he says the following thing. But we have to question this. The Ilah Hotzeh Mitzrayim. What does it mean? If God hadn't taken us from Egypt, we wouldn't have been slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Why? Because lies are clown the seen as a Torah Mamila. Because we wouldn't have gone to Mount Sinai. We wouldn't therefore have got the Torah. And automatically, the world will come back to Tohu V'Vohu. What? Null and void. There would have been no Pharaoh. There would have been no Egypt. What do you mean we would still be there? God says, if you don't accept the Torah, boom, Tohu V'Vohu. What a good question. Now that's Geschmack. Come on, what a wonderful word is Geschmack. Do you can think, sometimes you get a word in any language, but certainly a word, Geschmack's not Hebrew, but it's a word that's so just, there's no Shoma in there, Geschmack, okay. Kamosha Dosha Chazal, as the Chazal say, and he explains with the Hay and the Yom HaShishi, Tanai, Hisna Kodesh Baruch, and Maaseh Bereshis, there was a condition made, Hashem made with the world, the universe, at the moment of Bereshis, Im Lo Yikabel Yisrael Torah. If the Jewish people don't Makabel Torah, Ani Machzir Eskem LaTohu, we'll send you back to being Tohu V'Vohu. Right, so that's basic Jewish idea. So what on earth are they talking? It's a contradiction here. We would still be there, slaves to nonsense. There would be no there. It's a good question, huh? So this will be answers. So hold on to your seats. The king ksiv im lo brisi yom of alayla huk sham of oris lo samti. And again, the famous other passage wasn't from my Torah being learned night and day. The whole universe would be. I wouldn't have put it there. Then came lo hoya lo para lo mitzrayim. Therefore, there would be no Pharaoh. There would be no mitzrayim. The Nira. Don't make a mistake here. What is Toihu Vavohim? So think about it. It's right at the beginning of Bereshis. Bereshis bara came as a Shemaim. God created the beginning, the heavens and the earth. The Ha'oretz was Toihu Vavohim. They say null and void, whatever that means. The Ha'oretz. So Hoysa, I can't remember.
There was an
Hoysa. So there was Hoysa, yeah. So therefore, the earth was there, but its state was Toihu Vavohim. That means to say Toihu Vavohim is a state of existence, not, as he goes on to say, listen to this, it's not a complete absence of existence. No, the concept and the state of Tohu Vavoh is a state of existence. Because Shalom Kibla is the Torah, and had the Jews not been accepted the Torah, there wouldn't have been nothing, puff, gone. The world would have reverted to Tohu Vavohu. That is to say, the world would therefore exist, but in a completely and radically different state. So the world exists as a consequence of us keeping the Torah. With me?
People?
Oh, that's where we're going to
try
do.
again.
Oh, that's where we're going to do. No, yes, people, perhaps.
Saying these people that existed would have died.
No. Oh, no, we would exist. But the world, the regime of the world, think of Nazi Germany. Think of Nazi Germany. Think of Stalin's Russia. That sort of place, or much worse, or Mitzrayim itself. A horrible place of cruelty. I mean, don't forget the Romans used to bring their children to watch people being, the entrails spilling out in the sands of the Colosseum. And don't forget the Colosseum in Rome was built with the money of from the sacked Beis Hamikdash. The place that was supposed to bring this idea of the world of Klal Yisrael was replaced by an opposite place. Instead of bringing shalom and life to the world, it would bring fighting and death. Nevertheless, it would exist, but not in any way like the world exists once the Torah has been given. And of course Hashem would still send, that's the way that the clock, the mechanism of the universe works. Jewish souls would come to the world. But they would have been absorbed and sucked into the evil existence of this world. And it's a bit like a drop of from a pipette, boiling water, into a bucket of ice.
So he's saying that it's Soyavoy doesn't mean nothing, it's more an emptiness. Something that's missing goods.
Right. No, not meaningless. Oh, well, hold on, that's what we're going to now. We're going to take it to deep stuff, but it won't be as hard as the last one, don't worry. I'm going to look at the Alshik on this. That is to say, therefore, that the world can exist without Klal Yisrael, which strikes at the, maybe again, just as we're saying, a child's idea, or a Rubinstein's idea till I saw that, actually saw it in the Alshik. But before I saw the Alshik many years ago, I simply thought that because I'll say that the world goes back to Toiv nothing. No, that's not true. That's a oversimplistic and an inaccurate understanding. That it's possible for the world to exist without Klal Yisrael, but we have to understand why.
That's like Chaim Volozhin says that any moment that a Jew is not studying Torah somewhere in the world will...
Exactly. Oh, very good. That's exactly what that means. If you imagine, to give you an analogy for that, imagine how does it mean that somebody chomim arbim shalom ba'olam? It's interesting. I had two Rosh Yeshiva in Gateshead, Reb Leib Gurovitz and Reb Leib Lapin. They were brothers-in-law. Reb Leib Lapin was the son of Rebellia Lapin, the famous Rebellion. And he got stomach cancer, and they took out the stomach, and he was in excruciating agony. 3 nights ago, I was in the emergency room in Long Island emergency room because I woke up in incredible agony, and I somehow or other diagnosed exactly what was wrong. And at 1:45, my wife came back she was working in the mikveh, and people were late, and she told me to phone our doctor, the wonderful Dr. Zaid Carey, who's a fabulous guy. I sent him a text at 1:45, and he replied, and he said, I was like, what was the problem? I had a pain in my lower back kidney, which was radiating through to the groin area, and it was so painful, like I couldn't breathe properly, I couldn't catch my breath. And he said it's either an infection or it's a kidney stone, and of course it could be something else, which is the one we're all biting fingernails about. And there was blood in the urine as well, etc. Anyway, so off we went, and indeed it was a kidney stone. The pain was. My late wife had this once, and she had 6 children, and they usually say that it's worse than childbirth. Worse than childbirth. Why am I telling you that? I can't remember. It's all what we're talking about.
Leib Gerwitz had cancer.
Oh, he had cancer.
Leib
Lapien had cancer, and they took out his stomach. The pain was absolutely agony. They gave me something called Persiket, which is up there, which I haven't used, which is actually morphine. Because the pain of this can get so bad that you actually have to have morphine. My late wife had this, they actually had to give her morphine injections. The pain was so intense. The pain from the cancer was so bad that they actually gave him that sort of level of drug, but it affected his mind and he couldn't learn Torah. So he didn't take them. I remember when he recovered to give the first share, recovered enough to give the first share in his house, which was in Cambridge Terrace, if I remember correctly. It was only a walk of 4 minutes from Yeshiva downhill to Yeshiva. It took him 20 minutes to get there in tiny steps. It was an agony. But it was more important for him, even if we don't understand the idea of Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Olam, that Talmidei Chachamim themselves bring peace to the world, he did. But it was more important for him to go and say that Gemara share, even if it was an agony, than taking the painless way, but not learning Gemara. So, it's a bit like, if you imagine, if you take an apple from a tree and you put it in some store, some market, then the apple will have X amount of shelf life, before it becomes wrinkled and unsellable. On the tree, of course, it's going to have a much more extended life before it falls from the tree. So if you were to take it from the tree, and then you were to take the top of the apple and put a syringe, just like I had in my arm when they were sticking. Is that impressive? Oh. Isn't that good? When they're putting a saline solution into you, in my case, if you were to take the sap that flows through the tree, that creates the growth of the apple, you've severed it from the tree, but now you've reconnected it artificially in the same way as I was plugged in there to the sap, then by definition, the same sap that would have flowed through the apple when it was on the tree will now flow through the apple when it's off the tree, and the shelf life that it would have, or the life that it would have on the tree, is now going to be replicated on the shelf, in the shelf. Does that make sense? So when, as you say, we're learning Torah, as the world comes from the Torah, it was created, that life force that keeps the world going, then that is going to be, now replicated through Talmidei Chachamim learning Torah. Fine. Now, what's that got to do with the fire at the cathedral, the recent fire at the cathedral in Paris? Now, I used to live in Paris. So there are 2 cathedrals in Paris. I was going to do research as to why. But anyway, there are 2 cathedrals. So there are probably 2 bishops, I'm guessing. And of course, the word cathedral comes from the word cathedra, which is the Latin word for chair. And the bishop sits in the bishop's chair, the cathedra. The Pope, when he sits in his cathedra, when he makes an edict, issues a statement from there, then that's canon law, that's church law. But if he says something, he's not sitting in the chair, that's just his opinion. So you don't have to pay too much attention to it. So a Catholic friend informed me at Manchester University many years ago. So the one that burned down, that's what they call Notre Dame. That's French, of course, and it means Our Lady, so from our point of view, we would call it Le Dame, their lady. And it's interesting that you probably know that at the front of the cathedral there's these 2 statues. It's called Synagoga Eglise. One represents the church, one represents the synagogue. It's a statue of a woman. One is standing with her head held high, beautiful woman, and she's got this staff in her hand. The other one's the exact same woman, though she's blindfolded, head down, and her staff is broken. That's the synagogue. That's at the front of this cathedral. Anyway, lovely. So it's a celebration, as it were, of the triumph of the church over the synagogue. If you look in the other cathedral,
what happened 1,890 years ago or so, when it was built? What was going on in France that led to? Oh, that's appropriate.
Oh no, that's common. All over in medieval churches, that's common. Not just there. Not
was
just
something
there.
specifically going on that time?
No, it's
time
just
of the Balatites?
no. Yeah, it's a triumph of the church over the synagogue. It's a young church still, and therefore that's the point I'm trying to make. Hold on, I'll come to that in a second. The other cathedral is called Sacré-Cœur, Sacred Heart, which is all part of Christian Catholic stuff. They're all into this Sacred Heart thing, and it's rather ironically in the red light district of Paris called Pigalle. It's a very, very beautiful building. It's white marble domed. And if you go and if you can look online, a picture of the cathedral, the bishop's chair there has a large Star of David on it, on the back there, a large Star of David, because the church called itself the New Israel.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea. That's why these two statues are there. It's a common thing to say Christianity is the superseder of Judaism, of the Jewish people. That's right. Synagogue, that's pathetic, that's done, kaput. And this is the brand new model. Right? And that's not such a crazy idea, because the world can exist without Klal Yisrael. Right? Up till then, when I was a younger man, before I saw the Alshich, and which I'm going to show you in a minute, and this, you would simply walk past and go, what rubbish, without Klal Yisrael. They're just delusional. But they're actually not delusional, because it is conceivable for the world to exist without Klal Yisrael, as we just saw in the Shem Shmuel. And that takes us to an incredibly interesting journey. So let's go there, because to bring this to life, that's just like a little heading there. Let's go to the Alshich HaKodesh. So you've got your Alshichs there. Okay. Right. Now, this is the Alshich here. Where is this? Of course, I get it right, it'll be even better. Oh, no, come on. Let's just get this in the right page. Sorry, there's just a slight technical delay while Rubenstein actually gets his pages together. Good. Right. We're talking about the building of the Tower of Babel. Okay? So, if you remember, it starts off and it says, Vayhi kol haaretz, and the whole world was one language, and talking about Devarim Achadim. So, what did they say? I should have brought the Chumash to read this. And actually, I do have one over here. Comes back to the table. So my millions of watchers at home don't get upset. Where's he gone? This is the Alshich on the book. So I should have the posik at the beginning. Yud Aleph. Yeah, Vayhi kol haaretz sofa achas, the whole world was one tongue, or one thing. The Devarim Achadim. How would you translate Devarim Achadim? Hard. So they were united in words of oneness, words of unity. Vayhi b'nosam Mekedem, and they travelled from the east. V'yim Sabika, and they found a valley, Ba'oretz Shinar, in the land of Shinar, V'yeshu Sham, and they dwelled there. V'yomri ish el re'ehu, and each man said to his neighbour, Hoban Luban Levanim, let us build bricks. V'nisra b'streif, and we'll bake them in a kiln. V'dilahem levain le'evan lechomer hoyel le'chaymer, and we'll use cement. V'yom Rahava nivna lana ir, and we'll make a city, Migdal, and with a tower. V'rosh b'shamayim, with the tower which will reach into heaven. V'nasa lana Shem, and we'll make for ourselves a name, pen nofutz, lest we are scattered up in kol haaretz throughout all of the world. That's the famous bit there. Okay. This is an exact copy of the philosophy behind the cathedral of Sacré-Cœur and the cathedral of the burnt down in there. Let's see. So let's read that. Okay. So here's the Alshich's normal technique is to ask lots and lots of questions. Here he goes overboard in questions. I'm going to jump. However, you've got the whole thing there. You're going to take it away with you. At your own convenience to learn the whole thing. We're only going to be able to do a little bit. However, let's get into the questions. Incidentally, I don't know if you ever read Sherlock Holmes. But Sherlock Holmes, of course, was written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who came from Scotland. And of course, the genius, and incidentally, he was real. Oh no, Sherlock Holmes wasn't real, but Arthur Conan Doyle, he did that. The genius of his observation that he puts into Sherlock Holmes' mind was his observation. He was brought in to advise in cases. They say that actually Sir Arthur Conan Doyle created, a proper scientific technique when it comes to detection work. And he spotted things that other people don't spot. The Alshich very much does that. And one of the great thrills I had when I was a young man, a teenager, when I first discovered the Alshich from my old Rebbe Rabbi Yonah Volkan, was being able to spot the Alshich's questions. That you already know you were in a, it's sort of like, Watson. Didn't you notice that, sort of, duh, Watson seems to be a bit of a duh. But it's a thrill when you actually say, oh yes, if you could actually if Watson ever turned and said, yes, I noticed such and such. Impressed. Just to get to the madriga of understanding his questions is something, before we get to the answers. So the rabbis say, the Medrash says, what was the Devorim Achodim that we're talking about? Words of oneness. So they all had one language, which was, of course, Lashon HaKodesh, and we talked about that in our last year. But we're talking about Devorim Achodim. Al Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, the one Devorim Achodim, things of oneness, one plural, ones. We're talking about ones. One of the ones that we're talking about was Hashem is one. And the other one was that Avram existed. And he says, what is that? That's some pshat. The Chazal say, it seems nonsense.
That they were discussing Avram?
Yeah, and he was one. What does that mean? It seems very far away, he says, from the Pshat. Then it says they traveled to the east. And they traveled to the east and they found a valley, and each one said to him, what does it mean? Each one said to their neighbor, let's build. What's going on here? It should just say, and they built a city. What's it? And each one said to the neighbor. These are words that are extra. Okay. And they said, let us build an ear of Migdal. Why did they have to build a city? Why did they want to have a tower? What nonsense is this? Like the Ramban's question, that all the birds, all the animals in the world get into to Noah's Ark. He says, in Hebrew. What's more French after? You couldn't, he says, the Ramban famously says, you couldn't get one species of crow into an ark that size, into a square box. It was a rectangle. It was like a coffin, which is exactly how it would behave in the waves. Right? There's a reason that ships are that shape, and they have ballast that pull it underneath the water, so it pivots and doesn't tipple over. If you've got a square box at the top of them, you're going to be like an egg in a box that somebody shakes out. And you get all the animals in the world in there. That's why in the kids, or back to the kids' imagery, you get usually, again, it's Christian, you've got like a boat type shape, which it wasn't, and then there's a little house on the top. And of course, what's sticking out the top of the house? Giraffes, yes, 2 giraffes. And occasionally an elephant, sort of like toppling the boat over. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Unless, of course, the space inside was much larger in the inside than the outside.
Like in the Mishkan.
Like in the Mishkan. Or the animals shrunk to fit in there. But the Poshet Pshat simply defeats belief if you're working within the normal rules of yeah. So therefore, you're going to have a tower, and could you get all the people in the world into one city? I think so. And it's going to have its head in Shemayim, Shehu Dobra Bilte Esher, which is impossible. Now, there was a famous science fiction writer who was also a scientist, and I've forgotten his name. He's probably the most science fiction writer. I never read any of his stuff. But he actually proposed the idea, in order to explore space properly, because the problem is getting the spacecraft up there. No. He's Jewish, apparently.
They're proposing a tether.
No, not a tether. This guy was proposing an entire tower. And we go up with elevator, and then they would construct the spacecraft actually in lower space, and then just go from there. Anyway, his name will come to me in a second. But that's with technology today. Back then, how are they going to breathe up there? What is this? This is impossible. But and we'll make for ourselves a name, Mahu Hashem Hazev Sheyasa Be'ir Omigdal. And that's the first page of his question. Okay, turn over the page to page 2. Okay, and he says, to understand some of the answers, Roy Lawson Lev, it's appropriate that you should consider the following question. What was really going on here? Because Chazal say in Bereshit Rabbah, al Hashem Hashem Echad, val Hashem Avram. These two things that they say, what's really Omra Avram Zeh Preda Akar? What they were talking about Avram was that he was a Preda Akar. He was barren. Avram couldn't have any children. And the Gemara in Yevamos and Samach Dalet says that neither Avram nor Sora nor Rivka nor Rachel, Leah, Yitzchak, none of the Ovasimos could have children, could physically have any children. So we're talking about the fact he couldn't have any children. He's one.
And they knew that somehow.
Oh, when you say they knew, that's very good. He's going to actually talk about that in the next page. They had the ability to look and see into the future in the same way as Paro did. They're stars, etc. It does. They can look and glimpse the future. And indeed, they're right. And in fact, of course, don't forget that Nimrod was told, the king was told, that there was going to be a boy child born who was going to challenge him. And very much an echo of what happened later in Mitzrayim, he decides to kill all the male children in order to stop Avram coming. And of course, there's a whole story with that. But he was right, there was. They did see something accurate. There was going to be a boy who was going to be born and be born and challenge him. While Hashem Lekinu Omro, he called him in a lavor es Elyanim Olitin Lona es Atatanim. What that meant was that we're talking about God being one, and saying, oh, he's gonna create the upper worlds and we should get the lower worlds. Ela Bob and Nasalon Amigo. No, let us make a tower and let's make an idol at the top. But Rosh Hashanah and put a sword in its hand, but he near it and it will appear. That's what the Medrash says. And it will appear as though he's fighting against God. Appear? What sort of stupidity is that? Well, but that's what it says. Let's see if I can push you into page 3. And it doesn't say 3 at the top. It says 4 at the end, behind it, because it's a bit weird what happened, I'm not sure. But if you look at the other side of page 4, which is page 3, it should say V'hinei lavo ela inyan.
Oh,
you got that? Yeah, you do have that. You got it? Go back a bit.
5?
No, 3. Go back a page.
That's 5.
No, that's 5.
Behine? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's all a bit weird.
I didn't see 3.
That's entirely my fault. Yeah, it doesn't, for some reason, it didn't print it, I don't know why. Behine Lavalin, and to understand what's really going on here, the Skura Maimer Chazal, Bereshit Rabbah, Parsha Kaf Aleph. So to understand here, we need to dig deep to a little bit more background to find out what's going on. This it says, HaTeven Bakash, the Medrash. The Teven and the Kash, the straw and the stubble, Medain and Zeh, they're having a fight with each other. Okay? This is obviously a metaphor. Zeh Alma Bishvilin Israel Hazodi. One says, it was because of me the field was sown. That was me. To which the wheat says, wait until the harvest time and you'll see who is born. It was created for. Of course, the lungs of the harvest, the straw is thrown in a pile, get rid of that, and the stubble's left, but it's the wheat that's the important thing. Okay, that's the moshel. The nimshel, right in the middle of the paragraph, kach avodas gelanim. Similarly, the nations of the world, Amrim, Ono Ikar Bishvilin and Ivra Oilam. We are the chosen people, and because of us the world was created, not the Jews. Now, is that ringing a bell with what we talked about before, what was going on in Paris, or the medieval church? And of course, incidentally, I don't want to leave the Muslims out, but they say the exact same thing about us, and of course the Christians as well, that they've superseded them. They are the chosen people. And they say that Akedah Yitzchak was Akedah Ishmael.
That's just revision.
Yes, rather remarkable revisionism, saying that
the Christians didn't revise history; they just said that was then.
That was ended.
That's right. Okay, so he says, "Omrim Ana Iker B'Shvilin and Ivra Olam." We are the Iker. We are the real deal, and everybody else isn't. V'Halolo Omrim B'Shvilin and Ivra. Another nation said, "No, it's us." So the Christians say, and then the Muslims say, and everybody else. But Omrim Lehem Yisrael, to which Yisrael, that's the. So we're carrying through the metaphor. So just wait till the right day. We'll see exactly who the world was created for. That's what it says. A day is coming. That's the day of the Mashiach, etc. Well, no. Now jump to the next bit. And to understand fully what this is all about, there are a number of crucial Jewish principles that I have to establish. I think we're all familiar with them, but let's start. Some of them are very, very deep and very Kabbalistic, but I think they were not too difficult to conceive of. Key 1. This is a very easy idea. For everything God created that was positive, He created an equal and opposite negative. And that's why it says, and they're called Kitsonim, the externals, perhaps. This is also in Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verse 17, dearly beloved. Okay, so it's Koheles Yud Zayin. Base. Ki HaKedusha Echod Hoyatachus HaAchdus. Kedusha, holiness, which is, of course, comes from God, who is one, and is an expression and an offshoot of God, is in its nature one.
Again.
As God is one, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, then Kedusha, which is an element, emanates from God, and as an element of God, comes from God, reflects that oneness. Kedusha reflects oneness, unity. The opposite is disunity, and the non-Jewish world is not that way. It's individual. They're individual peoples. The Jewish people, the 12 tribes, still their difference is still part of one. That's why the word one, echod, is the gematir of 13, which is the 13 tribes. Right? We're not meant to be all the same, but there's a harmony there. So there's a musical group. There's an orchestra called Klal Yisrael. Some play the violin. That's the Levium. Some of the conductor. That's Yehuda from the tribe of Yehuda, etc., etc., etc. But the non-Jewish world, each have they're like rock stars. They're like pop groups, right? They're their own group. Their own little group doing their own different thing. Now, as the Jewish people come from that unity idea or that source, that's what we call one nation. And that's why it says that we are the souls that are down to Egypt were Shivim Nofesh, 70 soul. 70 soul? Not 70 souls, no, 70 soul. One, ultimately one. Whereas the non-Jewish nations, Edom, Esau's children, were Nefoshes Beisai. They were innately individualistic. Right? The Spanish are different to the Italians are very different to the French, and the Germans, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Doubt. From the Chochmei Emes, that's of course the Kabbalists, that nothing can exist, and none of these sources, none of these external sources, these external nations can exist, except from Kedusha, which is the life force of the world, as we said, the apple coming from the sap of the tree.
How do you understand Europe, the European Union, or the Arab League?
Yeah, these are or the United Nations. They're all attempts to unify a world which is innately disunified and individualistic.
Who's pushing it if they all have their own agenda?
Who was pushing them? Oh, just wait. This is exactly what this year is all about. Okay, so because there's so much to say, I say you'll see that later, but I'll just tell you what comes outside. That is to say, everything in the world has to be is sourced and created or recreated from heaven, and in an ideal world, when it's going right, it comes through us to the nations. In other words, the filter is the Jewish people, or the model that we set, the ideas that we set of kindness, of charity, of looking after people, spread out to the world as well. The idea of charity in India doesn't exist in Hinduism. They think that that's why the Indian flag has got a wheel on it, because they believe in reincarnation, and therefore it's the circle of life. And people who are born poor, you mustn't help them. The more they suffer, it's good for them, and they might be born rich next time. There's a concept of charity in India. It comes through Judaism to Christianity, through Islam into India, not in India itself. So we, as it were, it comes from us, the Ramban says that, into the world. So many positive things come from us to the world, not just talking about the incredibly high percentage of Nobel Prizes and the cures for all sorts of diseases like the Black Death which we were accused of causing, was actually cured by a Jew, polio, cured by a Jew, etc., etc. And a gazillion other things that come through us in the secular world, but in the spiritual world, the ethical world, moral world, that comes as well. But when we fail, then that same forces still have to come to sustain the world. But instead of coming through us to them, it comes from them to us. When we're in Golos, and those forces come through the nations of the world, and then we pick up the crumbs. That's what Golos says, right? Okay, and you'll see that insight when you look this over later. Okay, that's 3. So therefore 4. Now, and then he's got more principles here to get it all together, but that'll do for us plumbing the depths that's going on. Hine, page 4, second paragraph. Hine, Eshe ho yishtalshlis derek tzanoris and kadoshim mishar shamayim v'kum the kabbalah shpal kadosha alidei Yerushalayim tzin kavi seder anyonim. It's possible for the world to be sustained through, as it were, these energies flowing down to the place where it's heaven and earth kiss, which is Yerushalayim, and from there out to the rest of the world. Fine. Kenoida. Or, that's a scary word, or the same forces can flow from there into us. You get this? Okay.
How does it get there though?
So each nation has an angel, a heavenly angel, which looks after them, and a sort of heavenly United Nations. So the forces can come through them into the nations, and then, but that's bad. It upsets God. He goes on to say if it has to go that way. But let's pursue that a little bit further. So much, I'm just seeing the time running out terribly here. So, what time did we start? Oh gosh, poof! I might have to just okay. All right. Right. Okay. So I'm going to have to say the rest of it outside because I won't get to it. So here it goes like this. Therefore, if we got this principle we established in these fundamental principles that you mentioned before, zeh, as it says in Kelos, zeh le'om zeh, there's a positive equals a negative. Now you can understand what's going on. That they understood these principles that we're talking about. They understood with their instantaneous, their insights into how the world works, mystical, etc. We've actually touched on this in previous year, how that could be. There's an unbroken chain of knowledge of God all the way. Remember we talked about that not to 10 generations from Adam to Noah, 10 generations. There was always a prophet. These ideas were still alive in the world. They understood how God worked. They also understood how to obviate, how to stop what God wants to happen happening. And how could that be? By having these forces, instead of flowing through a cloud and straw, to flow through them, that they could replace the Jewish people. So how would that be? Well, just as there is a place which there is going to focus all the Kedusha that way through us, there's another place that would be the ideal replica, Zula Zeh, which will be bring it that way. That's why they move from the west to the east to a place that is a place unique for Tumah. Unique for Tumah. And that's where they're going to build a city with a tower. Does that ring a bell? A negative Yerushalayim. A negative, like a negative, you see the big, in which there's going to be a tower. Migdal David. Who is these people will say one to the other, let us build this place? Well, it's interesting. They're going to have the top of this, they're going to have an Avodah Zarah that seems to be making war with God with a sword in his hand. Nimrod's plan was to unite all the nations of the world. They've all their angels, they've all got their Avodah Zarah, they've all got their aspects of the universe and the way that works, and they drew forces to them to allow them to do the incredible things they did. Like the Egyptians drew their forces to be able to, from the astrological parts of the universe to allow them to do incredible things. But they're now going to unite, it would be a United Nations. They would have one new Avodah Zarah. Who's going to be at the top of this tower?
Fire.
Samuel, the Sultan. All nations agreed that they would now worship one Avodah Zarah, focus on one Avodah Zarah. That's Sultan. It would be Satan worship. The Malach, Samuel. The Malach with the sword against God, and they knew that they had the crucial, essential ingredient to make this work that would draw down these forces, and that is Achdut. If they would be united. Because, as we said, Kedusha goes to unity. The innate nature of the Jewish people is unity. If we can stop there being a Jewish people by replacing them, by creating unity within ourselves, truly united nations, then that would force God's hand that these forces would flow to them. There would be no need for Cloud and Straw. And God comes down and he says, this is what they started to do. Nothing will be withheld from them. They've, as it were, seen, the mechanism I've set in place. They're trying to distort the mechanism. They're trying to usurp the mechanism instead of for positive forces, for negative forces. I'll change their language so they're no longer united. So it's interesting yesterday about the European Union. It's falling to bits at the moment. Brexit and France, etc., and Italy certainly at the moment, etc., etc. And the thing is that their innate nature is not to come together. But they were united, that brought them together was the threat of Cloud and Straw. Along will come somebody who will become the primary nation for Kedusha in the world. We must stop that happening. And there would be a way, just like the Shem Mishmal said, for the world to operate toihu v'voihu. They would recreate. What do you mean there'd be slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt? There would be no slaves. There would be no. Who says? Yes, there would, but there'd be no Cloud and Straw. There's a wave to make the world work without a Cloud and Straw. Now, let's state the obvious. You all remember there, Rashi says that he poses the obvious question. The two great destructions of evil in the world were Noah and the flood, which we alluded to before, and the scattering of the nations at the Tower of Babel. And he famously poses the question, whose crime was worse? At the time of the flood, nobody tried to actually go to war against God, and yet they were wiped out. Here, they actually planned to defeat God, beat him, if you can say, at his own game. At least that was their perception. And yet they just get scattered. And remember what Rashi says there? It shows you how much God values Shalom and Achdus. Because at the time of the flood, then they hated each other. They mugged each other. They raped each other's wives or grabbed each other. All that sort of stuff, right? But these people were united. These people had unity. Unity is the essential ingredient that would force God's hand to allow the forces that keep the world going to go to them and obviate Cloud and Straw. Therefore, by definition, Achdus. We're only in this Godless. It only goes through them because we have destroyed our own Achdus. And that's the very nature of Cloud and Straw. Many years ago.
This was reactionary to Avram's message?
Oh, absolutely.
So
now they saw that Avram was only going to be one because remember they could see they had thousands of disciples and thousands of what's the word? I'm trying to think of the English word. Adherents. But they also saw, as we know, not one of Avram's adherents lasted the next generation. So he's a flash in the pan. He's not going to last. He'll be gone. What they didn't see that what they saw was a barren person who could not have a child, with a wife who couldn't have a child. They didn't see that Hashem's going to change all that. And we can't defeat Hashem. Hashem sees all this anyway. The whole message, though, comes back to us. Achdus guarantees our success. Disunity guarantees the success of our enemies. And we're living through, as on today, two famous Nazi hunters, what's her name? Husband and wife team saying this is exact rerun of the 1930s we're going through at the moment.
The shul shootings?
The shul shootings in America, what's going on in Europe. I mean, I'm halfway through my process of becoming an American, and a lot of my motivation is so that if my kids need to run here, as an American father, they've got the right to come. This is serious stuff we're going through. The antidote to this is Achdus. So, I've lived in many kehilas in my lifetime. I remember in Gateshead, which is, of course, where I did all my growing, really. Somebody called Rabbi Cohen, a wonderful person, once spoke at Sheva Brachos, and he said, if he were to ask me what's the success of Gateshead, and he pointed to the Gateshead Rov, one Rov, and then he said, I give a bracha to the kehila, no machlokas. And that would be in our wonderful kehila, then with our growing and new kehila, we should all have a t-shirt. One Rov, no machlokas.
Can I ask you to elaborate on the Avram concept?